The morning sun had just begun to rise over the small neighborhood, casting a golden glow on the worn-out streets. The houses were close together, some painted in bright colors, while others had faded walls that told stories of many years and many struggles. Children ran barefoot on the sidewalks, laughing and chasing each other, their voices carrying across the narrow lanes. The smell of fresh bread and frying food came from small kitchens, mixing with the scent of dust from the streets. It was a neighborhood where life was not easy, but the people had a kind of quiet strength that came from living through hardships. Everyone knew everyone else, and every small event became a shared moment. From a neighbor celebrating a birthday to someone helping carry heavy groceries. In this place, life moved slowly but deeply, full of small joys and small sorrows. Among the children, there was a young boy named Malik. He was about 10 years old, with bright, curious eyes that seemed to notice everything. Even though his clothes were worn and his shoes had holes, he walked with a kind of quiet confidence. The boy lived with his mother and two younger siblings in a small house at the corner of the street. His father had been away for many years, and sometimes Malik would sit by the window and wonder about him, what he looked like, what he did, and whether he thought of them too. Despite these questions and the small struggles at home, Malik had a heart full of hope, curiosity, and courage. He loved learning about people and their lives, and he often imagined stories about the strangers he saw every day. On that particular morning, Malik was walking to the small corner store to buy some bread for his family. As he walked, he noticed people preparing for their day. Shopkeepers opened shutters. A woman swept the steps in front of her house, and an old man watered a few plants that had survived the harsh summer. Everyone seemed busy, but they still nodded to each other, greeted with smiles, showing a sense of community that was hard to find in bigger cities. Malik loved these small connections. They made the neighborhood feel alive and safe. He felt proud of the place he called home, even if it was not perfect. As he turned a corner, Malik's attention was caught by a man walking down the street. The man wore a dark uniform and a badge that gleamed in the sunlight. He was a police officer, patrolling the neighborhood, but there was something about him that made Malik stop in his tracks. It was the tattoo on the man's arm, partly hidden under the sleeve, but enough to notice that it had intricate patterns and symbols. Malik's curiosity was sparked instantly. The tattoo reminded him of stories his mother once told about his father, who had a tattoo of his own, a symbol that Malik had always wanted to understand. Seeing the officer's tattoo made Malik's imagination race. Could it be like his father's? Could it mean something special? He wanted to know more, but he also felt a mix of nerves and excitement. Malik watched as the officer walked slowly, greeting a few neighbors with a nod or a smile. Children waved shyly, and he noticed that even adults treated him with respect. The officer seemed calm, confident, and kind, not like the scary figures that some children in other neighborhoods whispered about. Malik thought about the stories he had heard in school, how some kids said police were only there to enforce rules. But this officer seemed different, approachable, and human. This made Malik's heart beat a little faster. He wanted to get closer, to see the tattoo better, but also to say something important, something personal. The boy remembered his mother's words, always be respectful, and speak from your heart. Malik, she had taught him to treat everyone with kindness, no matter who they were, and to have courage when facing strangers, even authority figures. Malik took a deep breath, thinking about how he could approach the officer. He thought of the words carefully, wanted to speak clearly, and not make a mistake, but deep down, he also knew that he had a story to share, a connection to make, and that maybe, just maybe, the officer would understand. The neighborhood itself seemed to pause in that moment, as if sensing something important was about to happen. Birds chirped softly, and a light breeze moved through the street, bringing with it the scent of fresh food and flowers from small gardens. Malik's heartbeat matched the rhythm of the world around him, slow, steady, and full of anticipation. This was not just another morning. It was a moment that could change everything. Even if he didn't know how yet, the streets, the houses, the people, and the rising sun all became the stage for what was about to unfold. A story of courage, connection, and innocence. And so, with his small hands clutching the bread he had bought, Malik took his first step toward the officer, his eyes fixed on the tattoo that reminded him of his father. With each step, His nervousness mixed with excitement. He was ready to speak, to connect, to bridge the gap between a poor boy and a uniformed man. Little did he know, this simple act of courage would become a story that the entire neighborhood, and soon many others, would remember. Malik's small feet moved quickly but quietly over the dusty street, his eyes never leaving the police officer's arm. He felt a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness, like butterflies dancing in his stomach. He had never spoken to a police officer before, and the thought made his throat dry. But something inside him told him that this moment was important, that it could be special, maybe even life-changing. As he approached, the officer noticed the boy staring curiously, his wide eyes full of questions. The man stopped and bent slightly, trying to make himself less intimidating. "Hey there, little man," he said with a friendly tone, his voice warm and calm. "What's your name?" Malik swallowed hard, then whispered, "My name is Malik, sir." The officer smiled, nodding. "Nice to meet you, Malik. What brings you out this early?" Malik hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to start, but then he remembered the words he had practiced in his mind, the words that carried his heart. His voice shook a little as he said, "Hi, sir. My father has a tattoo just like yours." The officer's eyes widened slightly, a mix of surprise and curiosity crossing his face. He looked down at his own tattoo and then back at Malik, noticing the boy's innocence, honesty, and courage. It was rare for someone to approach him this way, without fear or judgment. The officer took a small step closer, crouching slightly, so they were closer to eye level. "Really?" he asked, his voice gentle. "Tell me more, Malik. What does your father's tattoo look like?" Malik felt encouraged by the officer's calm and friendly demeanor, and the nervousness began to fade a little. He described the tattoo in careful words, how it was a symbol of strength, hope, and family, and how he had always imagined what it meant. The officer listened closely, nodding with interest, and for a moment, the uniform, the badge, and the authority faded away, leaving only two human beings sharing a connection. Malik felt a warmth in his chest as he realized that this man wasn't just an officer. He was a person who could understand, who could listen, and who could see him. The officer, in turn, felt something unexpected, a tug at his heart, as he remembered his own father, the lessons he had learned as a child, and the people who had shaped his life. "Do you want to see mine up close?" the officer asked, gently rolling up his sleeve so Malik could see the tattoo more clearly. Malik's eyes lit up, and he nodded eagerly, stepping a little closer. His fingers didn't touch, but his gaze studied every line and curve, comparing it to the descriptions of his father's tattoo. He was amazed at how similar they looked, almost like a bridge between his life and the officer's, almost like a sign that people, even from different worlds, could have something in common. As they stood there, Malik asked more questions, innocent but thoughtful. "Sir, does it hurt? Did it take a long time? Why did you get it?" The officer chuckled softly, realizing the boy's curiosity was not just about the tattoo, but about life itself. "It hurt a little, yes, and it took patience, just like many things in life, Malik, and I got it to remind me of what's important, family, courage, and keeping promises." Malik nodded, absorbing the words like a sponge, feeling a connection to something bigger than himself. Around them, the neighborhood continued its morning routine, but a quiet sense of attention seemed to hover in the air. A few neighbors glanced out their windows, curious about the interaction. Children paused in their play, sensing a moment that was unusual and heartwarming. In that simple encounter, something powerful was happening. A small boy and a police officer from different lives and experiences were finding common ground. A moment of humanity, courage, and understanding that went far. Beyond the street they stood on, Malik's heart swelled with pride and happiness. He had spoken, he had been seen, and he had connected. The officer felt a quiet respect for the boy, for his honesty, bravery, and curiosity, and he realized that even the smallest interactions could leave a lasting mark on someone's life. Malik's story was not just about a tattoo. It was about courage, hope, and the power of human connection. And in that moment, both their lives had quietly changed in ways neither of them would forget. After Malik had admired the officer's tattoo, he felt a little braver, as if speaking those first words had opened a door he never knew existed. The officer, noticing the boy's curiosity, smiled warmly and said, "Malik, do you want to tell me more about your father?" Malik's heart beat faster, but he nodded, his small hands twisting together nervously. He began to speak, his voice quiet first, but growing steadier as he went on. "My father. He hasn't been around for a long time, sir. He used to tell me stories about life, courage, and never giving up, and he had a tattoo, just like yours, that he said reminded him of his family. He never explained it fully, but I think it means hope, bravery, and love." The officer listened intently, his expression softening, a sense of respect forming for this boy who spoke so openly from his heart. Malik continued, "I always wanted to know what it really meant, sir, but no one explained it to me. Not even my mom could tell me exactly. She just said it was important to him and that I should be proud of it. I wanted to see it, to understand it, and that's why I noticed yours, because it reminded me of him." The officer felt a lump in his throat, touched by the honesty, innocence, and longing in Malik's words. He realized that this boy, though small in size, carried a strength and courage that many adults lacked. "Malik," the officer said gently, "I can see how much your father means to you, and how proud you are of him. That's a very special feeling, and your father will be proud of you too. You're brave to speak so openly, and it shows a lot about your character. Courage isn't about fighting or being strong physically. It's about being honest, standing up, and sharing your heart. And you, Malik, are already showing it." Malik's eyes widened, his heart swelling with a mix of surprise and happiness. He had never been told something like that before, from someone he didn't even know. The boy's curiosity pushed him further. "Sir, can I ask, why did you get your tattoo? Does it remind you of someone too?" The officer chuckled softly, looking down at his arm, tracing the lines of ink. "Yes, Malik, it reminds me of my father and my family. It reminds me of who I am and the people I want to be for. It's a promise I carry with me, to always protect, to always be honest, and to never forget where I came from." Malik nodded slowly, taking in every word, feeling a strange connection between the officer and his own father. He realized that even though they were different, their lives shared a similar heartbeat, a bond of family, values, and hope. The conversation grew deeper, Malik asking questions about life, fairness, and the challenges the officer faced. He asked, "Sir, is it hard to be a police officer? Do people always listen?" The officer sighed, a gentle sadness in his eyes. "Sometimes it is hard. Malik, people judge before they understand, and not everyone sees the good intentions. But moments like this, talking with someone honest and kind like you, remind me why I chose this path. It's about helping, protecting, and connecting with people, even when it's difficult." Malik's young mind absorbed every word, realizing that life was complicated, but courage, honesty, and kindness could make a difference. For a few minutes, they spoke without fear, without judgment, just two humans sharing a moment. The neighborhood seemed to pause around them, the hum of daily life fading as if to give space for this connection. Malik felt seen, understood, and valued, and the officer felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a quiet, pure sense of hope. Finally, Malik smiled shyly. "Thank you, sir, for listening and for telling me about your tattoo. I feel like I understand a little more now, and it makes me proud of my father too." The officer smiled back, ruffling the boy's hair gently. "And I'm proud of you, Malik, for being brave enough to speak, curious enough to ask, and kind enough to connect. Remember this feeling, because moments like these stay with you forever." Malik's eyes shone with excitement, pride, and a newfound respect, not just for the officer, but for himself and the courage he had shown. In that quiet street, amidst the small homes and bustling neighbors, a simple conversation had formed a bridge between childhood and adulthood, curiosity and experience, absence and presence. This wasn't just a boy and a police officer talking. It was a moment that would linger in their hearts forever, a story of connection, understanding, and the quiet power of honesty, courage, and human empathy. As Malik and the officer continued talking, something shifted in the air, something invisible, but powerful. It wasn't just words anymore. It was a connection, one neither of them expected. Malik's small voice, full of curiosity and courage, had broken the usual barrier between a child and a uniformed man. The officer, whose days were usually filled with rules, reports, and caution, suddenly felt a warmth in his chest. A reminder that his job wasn't only about authority. It was about people. Malik, encouraged by the officer's kindness, grew bolder. "Sir," he asked, his eyes wide, "did your father teach you about courage too? Did he have a tattoo like yours?" The officer paused, looking down at his own arm, tracing the patterns in thought. "Yes, Malik," he said slowly, "my father taught me many things about honesty, patience, and helping others. He didn't explain everything in words, but his actions showed me what was important. The tattoo, it reminds me of that. And of him. It's a symbol of lessons learned and promises kept." Malik nodded thoughtfully, imagining his own father, wishing he could ask him these questions, wishing he could see the world through his father's eyes. The boy realized something surprising, that even though the officer was different from his father, there was a similarity in their values. Both cared deeply about family, honor, and doing what was right. The tattoos became more than just ink. They were symbols of connection, courage, and love. Malik's heart felt lighter. Like a missing piece had found a place. He had approached the officer, hoping to see a reflection of his father. And in a way, he had. The man in front of him wasn't his father. But the lessons and feelings were similar, real, and comforting. The officer, noticing the boy's thoughtful silence, asked gently, "Malik, do you want to hear a story about my father?" Malik's eyes lit up. "Yes, sir, please," he whispered eagerly, leaning in closer. The officer smiled softly, his voice calm but filled with emotion. "When I was about your age, my father would take me to the river, early in the morning, just like the sun is rising now. He taught me to be patient, to notice the small things, to respect people no matter who they were. He said that courage doesn't always mean fighting. Sometimes it means listening, helping, and standing up for what is right, even when it's hard." Malik listened intently, feeling as if he were standing by the river himself, seeing the lessons unfold before his eyes. As the story continued, Malik began to feel a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in a long time. Even though his father wasn't around, the lessons from someone else, someone kind and understanding, felt like a gift. The officer, in turn, felt a quiet pride, realizing that his words, his time, and his willingness to connect could change a life. Malik wasn't just a child asking questions. He was a bridge, reminding the officer why human connection mattered more than procedures or rules. Then, without warning, the officer shared something personal that surprised Malik. "You know, Malik, when I see someone brave like you, it reminds me of my younger self, curious, honest, and full of questions. I wish I had someone who would listen and guide me in the same way back then." Malik looked up, amazed, feeling a sense of importance. As if the world had suddenly expanded, he realized that even small actions, like asking questions and sharing stories, could create ripples of change. Not just in his life, but in someone else's too. The boy smiled shyly. "Sir, I feel like you understand me, like you see me, even though we don't know each other, and it makes me happy." The officer knelt slightly, looking Malik in the eyes. "I do see you, Malik, and I'm proud of the boy you are. Your courage, honesty, and curiosity are rare gifts. Never forget that." Malik's chest felt full, an unfamiliar warmth spreading inside him. He had come looking for a connection, maybe a reflection of his father. But he had found something even more powerful, a human being who respected, understood, and inspired him. The sounds of the neighborhood returned slowly, children laughing, neighbors talking, birds chirping. But for Malik and the officer, time had slowed down. They stood there together, two lives intersecting in a way that neither could have predicted. A poor boy and a police officer from two different worlds had found common ground through honesty, curiosity, and shared values. The moment wasn't flashy. There were no grand gestures. But the power of what happened was undeniable. It was a connection that would stay with both of them forever. A reminder that understanding and compassion can bridge any gap. As Malik waved goodbye to continue on his errands, he felt lighter, stronger, and braver. The officer watched him go, feeling unexpectedly grateful, reminded that every day holds the potential for small moments that can change lives. In that quiet street, amidst the simple houses and morning hustle, a boy and a man had discovered an unexpected connection, one that would linger in their hearts, shaping their thoughts, actions, and memories in ways neither would ever forget. Just as Malik was about to turn and continue walking, a sudden commotion erupted down the street. A group of older kids had cornered a small girl, yelling at her and to try and take her backpack. The air seemed to tighten, and for a moment, the morning felt tense and heavy. Malik froze, his heart pounding. He knew he should run for help, but his feet felt rooted to the ground. He remembered the officer standing nearby, the same man whose tattoo reminded him of his father. Without thinking, Malik shouted, "Sir, over here. That girl needs help." The officer's head snapped toward the voice, and instantly his body reacted, trained instincts kicking in. He saw the situation immediately, a girl frightened, surrounded by older children, and a young boy pointing urgently. Malik's eyes were wide, full of fear but also determination. It was a moment that demanded action, and both of them felt it deeply. The officer moved quickly, his authoritative voice ringing out, "Hey, step back now." The older kids froze for a moment, surprised by the sudden presence of authority. Malik noticed that the officer's calm but firm demeanor had a power that was undeniable. It wasn't just shouting. It was control, presence, and a knowledge that someone would not tolerate harm. Malik felt a surge of hope, realizing that courage wasn't only in fighting or standing alone, but also in asking for help and trusting others. The small girl looked up at Malik with wide, tearful eyes, and Malik nodded to reassure her. "It's okay. I called him. He's here." The officer stepped closer, positioning himself between the girl and the older kids, his badge gleaming in the morning sun, and his tattoo a silent symbol of the lessons he carried with him. The older kids, realizing the seriousness of the situation, slowly backed away, mumbling under their breath, and eventually scattered down the street. The tension melted, replaced by relief. Malik exhaled, feeling a strange mix of fear, excitement, and pride. He had acted, spoken up, and helped prevent something bad from happening. Even if only a little. The officer crouched down to Malik's level, a small smile forming on his face. "Malik, that was brave," he said, his voice calm but full of admiration. "You saw something wrong, and you acted. You didn't just stand by. You spoke up, and that took courage." Malik's cheeks flushed, not from embarrassment, but from the pride of realizing that he had actually helped, and in a real way. The officer continued, "Most people are afraid in moments like that, but not you. You didn't hesitate, and that's a sign of strength, Malik. Sometimes bravery is quiet, simple, and unnoticed by the world, but it makes a huge difference. You just proved that today." Malik's heart swelled, and he felt a deeper connection to the officer. It was as if their earlier conversation about tattoos, fathers, and courage had prepared him for this moment. The lessons weren't just words. They were alive in him now, guiding his actions. The girl, still trembling slightly, thanked Malik softly. Thank you," she stammered, clutching her backpack. Malik smiled back, nodding. "It's okay, I'm glad you're safe." The officer placed a reassuring hand on the girl's shoulder, his gaze then returning to Malik. "See, Malik? Courage and kindness come in all sizes, and sometimes the smallest actions have the biggest impact." Malik realized he had learned something far bigger than any lesson at school or any story his father had told. He had learned that being brave could save someone, could change the moment, could make a difference in a real, tangible way. For a moment, they all stood in silence, the morning resuming around them. But something inside Malik had shifted. He no longer felt small, powerless, or uncertain. He felt strong, capable, and connected. The officer looked at him with genuine respect, not just as a boy, but as someone who had acted with integrity and courage. The tattoo on the officer's arm seemed to shimmer in the sun, a symbol not just of past lessons, but of present actions, lessons being lived out in real life. As Malik walked away, the girl safe behind the officer, he felt a surge of confidence and pride. The street that had felt ordinary only moments before now seemed full of possibility, full of people, moments, and connections that could teach, inspire, and transform. The encounter with the officer had started as curiosity, then grew into understanding, and now had become action. Malik realized that courage wasn't just a story or a symbol. It was a choice, and he had made it that morning in that quiet street. A poor boy, a police officer, and a frightened girl had all experienced a turning point, one that would remain in their hearts forever. After the incident with the girl, the neighborhood seemed calmer. Yet the energy in the air had shifted. Malik walked beside the officer, his small hands still clenching and unclenching nervously. He was no longer just a boy observing life. He had taken action, and that feeling settled deep in his chest, warm and powerful. The officer noticed the thoughtful look on Malik's face and decided to take a few moments to talk about what had just happened. "Malik," the officer said gently, "do you know why what you did just now was important?" Malik shook his head slightly, unsure if he really understood. The officer continued, "It wasn't just about stopping those kids or helping that girl. It was about courage, kindness, and responsibility. You saw something wrong, and instead of ignoring it, you acted. You didn't wait for someone else. You chose to do what was right. And that's a lesson many people never learn." Malik's eyes widened, the words sinking in slowly, as if they were seeds planting themselves in his heart. The boy asked quietly, "So, being brave isn't always about fighting or yelling?" The officer smiled, shaking his head. "Exactly. Malik, bravery often looks quiet, invisible even. It's in speaking up when it's easier to stay silent, helping someone when no one else does, showing kindness when it's easier to be angry or mean. Every small choice you make can show courage and make a difference. Just like today." Malik nodded, feeling a sense of pride mixed with humility. He had acted without fully realizing it, and now he understood why it mattered. The officer paused, looking at Malik with a seriousness that carried weight. "I want you to remember this, Malik. Life isn't always fair, and people will sometimes doubt you or ignore you, but the choices you make, the courage you show will define you. Not what others think, not what life throws at you, but how you act when it matters most." That tattoo on my arm? It's a symbol of lessons learned and promises kept. But the real lessons, bravery, respect, and love, are in your actions every day, not just ink on skin. Malik's young mind absorbed every word, imagining the weight of the lesson and the power it could carry into his own life. Malik felt a sudden urge to share something with the officer. "Sir, my father. He told me stories about being brave too, but he's not around. And I always felt like I had to understand it on my own. But now I think I do. I think I can be brave in my own way, just like you said." The officer nodded, his eyes soft, touched by the honesty and reflection in the boy's words. "Yes, Malik, and that is the most important part. You're learning not from fear or force, but from understanding. That's the kind of bravery that lasts a lifetime." The boy's gaze wandered to the street, where neighbors were beginning to notice the officer and the girl who had been frightened earlier. Children waved quietly, some still curious, and even adults seemed to pause and watch. Malik realized that bravery could inspire others, that one small act could ripple through a community. The officer noticed the realization in the boy's eyes and smiled. "See, Malik, every time you choose courage, every time you help or speak up, you make the world a little better. People notice, even if they don't say it, and they feel inspired too. That's the kind of change that lasts." For Malik, the lesson went deeper than he expected. It wasn't just about being brave or helping someone. It was about who he wanted to be, how he wanted to live. He thought of his father, his mother, and his siblings, and how he could carry this courage into every day, not just in big moments, but in small, quiet choices as well. The officer's words became a compass, guiding him toward empathy, courage, and kindness. As the morning moved on, the boy thanked the officer quietly. "Thank you, sir, for teaching me this, for really showing me." The officer placed a reassuring hand on Malik's shoulder. "You're welcome, Malik, but remember, the lesson isn't mine to give. It's yours to live. Every day, every choice you carry it forward. Make it count." Malik nodded solemnly, feeling the weight and the beauty of the responsibility he now understood. As they parted ways for a brief moment, Malik glanced back at the officer, feeling a newfound confidence and determination. He had learned that bravery wasn't loud or flashy. It was quiet, meaningful, and powerful. A single boy could make a difference. A single choice could inspire hope. And even a poor child in a small neighborhood could carry the strength to change lives. That morning, Malik understood something his father had never fully explained. True courage is more than action. It's heart. empathy, and the choice to do what's right. The morning had stretched in a late afternoon, and the sun was beginning its slow descent, casting long golden shadows across the narrow streets. Malik walked beside the officer, feeling a strange mix of pride, happiness, and sadness. He had learned so much, acted courageously, and formed a connection he would never forget. But he also knew that this moment couldn't last forever. All good things, he realized, had to end at some point, and soon he would have to say goodbye. The officer seemed to sense it too. His usually steady gaze softened as he looked down at Malik. "You've done very well today, Malik," he said gently. "More than I can say. You've shown courage, honesty, and kindness, not just in what you did, but in who you are." Malik's small chest swelled with pride. He felt like he had accomplished something important, something bigger than himself. But at the same time, he didn't want the moment to end. The boy glanced at the officer, his eyes wide. "Sir, will I ever see you again?" The officer smiled softly, kneeling to be at eye level with him. "Malik, I don't know exactly, but I will come back to this neighborhood. And when I do, I'll look for you, because I want to see how you're doing and hear about all the brave choices you've made." Malik nodded, feeling a warmth spread through him. He had expected authority and rules from the officer, but instead he found care, respect, and guidance, something far more valuable. For a moment, neither of them spoke, just watched the quiet street around them. The sounds of children playing, neighbors talking, and birds chirping filled the air. Yet for Malik, it felt like a world apart, as if time had slowed to honor their shared moment. He realized that this was more than just a farewell. It was a recognition, a silent promise that their connection would matter beyond today. The officer finally spoke again, his voice calm but emotional. "Malik, always remember this. Bravery isn't just about facing danger. It's about doing the right thing, helping others, and standing tall even when it's hard. You've done that today, and it will guide you for the rest of your life." Malik looked down at his worn shoes, trying to hold back a lump in his throat. "I'll remember, sir," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I promise I'll try to be brave, like you said." The officer reached out and ruffled Malik's hair gently, a gesture that spoke volumes. "I know you will. Malik, you already are." Malik smiled shyly, feeling both proud and a little sad. He had grown in those few hours in ways he didn't expect, and now the officer had to leave. The officer straightened and adjusted his uniform, preparing to continue his patrol, but before walking away, he bent slightly, looking directly at Malik. "One more thing," he said. "Your choices matter, your voice matters, and your heart matters. Never forget that. You can change the world in your own way, starting with the people around you." Malik's eyes glistened as he nodded, feeling the weight and beauty of the words sink in. This wasn't just advice. It was a lesson, a gift, a memory he would carry forever. As the officer walked away down the street, Malik stayed still for a moment, watching him go, a strange mix of sadness and inspiration swirling his chest. He realized that even though the officer would leave, the lessons, courage, and connection they shared would never leave him. Malik felt a quiet determination rising inside him. He knew that he could face challenges, help others, and make a difference, just like the officer had shown him. Finally, Malik turned and ran toward his home, eager to tell his mother and siblings what had happened. The words tumbled out of him in bursts of excitement and emotion. He shared the story of courage, the lesson of bravery, and a connection he had made with someone who had seemed so far away from his world, yet had become a guide, a friend, and an inspiration. In that moment, Malik realized that the farewell wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something much bigger. The neighborhood, once ordinary, now felt alive with possibility. Every shadow, every sound, every passing stranger reminded Malik that the world was full of moments waiting to be shaped by courage, kindness, and honesty. And though the officer had gone, his presence lingered, like the echo of a promise, a reminder that even small people, small acts, and brief encounters could leave a lasting mark. That day, Malik had learned more than lessons about bravery. He had learned about hope, human connection, and the power of being seen. As the sun dipped lower, casting a warm glow over the street, Malik smiled to himself, feeling ready for the challenges and adventures that lay ahead. He knew that one day he would meet the officer again, but until then, he carried the lessons, courage, and inspiration in his heart. A poor boy and a police officer had crossed paths, and though the farewell was emotional, it marked the start of a journey that would shape Malik's life forever. Days passed since Malik's encounter with the officer, yet the memory of that morning stayed alive in his mind. It was as if every lesson, every word, and every smile from the officer had been etched into his heart. He carried a new confidence, a quiet courage that made him stand taller, walk a little straighter, and speak with more care. Malik began noticing small ways to apply what he had learned, helping neighbors, comforting younger children, and even standing up when he saw someone being treated unfairly. At home, Malik could hardly wait to share everything with his mother. She listened quietly as he told her about the tattoo, the conversation, the incident with the girl, and the lessons the officer had given him. Her eyes filled with tears, proud of her son, realizing that he had grown in ways she hadn't expected. Malik's mother hugged him tightly and whispered, "Your father would be proud too, Malik, but even more than that, I'm proud of the man you're becoming." Malik felt warmth spread through him, knowing that courage and understanding weren't just about big moments. They were about living with integrity every day. The officer, meanwhile, returned to his daily rounds, but Malik's words, curiosity, and bravery lingered in his mind. He often thought about the boy who had approached him so innocently, yet so boldly. He realized that even a single moment of attention, kindness, and guidance could inspire a young life in ways he hadn't imagined. The officer began making small visits to the neighborhood, checking in, offering guidance, and quietly supporting Malik and other children, building trust and connection where it was needed most. Malik began seeing the world differently, noticing opportunities to make a difference. He would help younger children cross the street safely, share food with those who didn't have enough, and speak up when he saw injustice. Each small action reminded him of the officer's words about courage, integrity, and kindness. He realized that even small gestures could create ripples. That bravery didn't always require recognition or reward. It simply required a willing heart. In school, Malik's confidence grew, not in arrogance, but in quiet assurance. His teachers noticed a change too, seeing a boy who was more focused, more compassionate, and more willing to help his classmates. Malik's friends began following his example, and soon, small acts of courage and kindness spread through his neighborhood. One boy helping another, one student standing up for someone being teased, and one child sharing a lesson learned, all inspired by Malik's journey. Months later, the officer returned to the neighborhood and found Malik, now a little taller, walking with confidence. The officer smiled warmly, kneeling to greet him at eye level. "Malik, I see you've been living what we talked about," he said, observing the quiet bravery in the boy's demeanor. Malik grinned. "I have, sir. Every day, I try to remember what you told me, and it helps me make choices, help people, and feel proud of who I am." The officer felt a deep satisfaction, knowing that his guidance had grown into something far bigger than a single conversation. The bond between them became a lasting source of inspiration, not just for Malik, but for the community. The boy had become a symbol of hope, courage, and the power of small, meaningful actions. People began noticing how simple gestures could create change, and the lessons of bravery, kindness, and honesty spread like wildfire, transforming not just one child, but the environment around him. One evening, Malik sat by his window, looking at the sun setting over the neighborhood. He thought about the officer, his father, and all the lessons he had received. He realized that life was full of challenges, but also full of opportunities to make a difference, to act with courage, and to inspire others. And in that quiet moment, Malik understood something profound. The world didn't need him to be perfect. It only needed him to be brave, honest, and kind. Years later, Malik would remember that morning as the beginning of everything. The moment a simple conversation, a shared curiosity, and a small act of courage had changed the course of his life. A poor boy and a police officer, two lives from different worlds, had intersected, leaving behind lessons of bravery, hope, and humanity. Malik realized that anyone, anywhere, could make an impact, no matter how small, and that one brave heart could inspire countless others. And so, Malik carried the lessons forward, living each day with courage and compassion, becoming a quiet hero in his own right, proving that even a small boy from a poor neighborhood could change the world around him, one choice, one action, one moment at a time. The story of Malik and the officer wasn't just about tattoos, courage, or authority. It was about humanity, connection, and the lasting impact of kindness, courage, and hope.